there is an interesting sort of backstory and how life sort of brings things together. I mean, as a teenager, I spent a lot of time on cattle ranches in Australia, chasing bulls on horses and driving around checking water that didn't need checking 95% of the time. I didn't really know that 25 years later I'd be running a water technology company that would be solving that problem. But, that's how life is and how, the cards fell.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Top Cattle Sales. I'm your host, Kyle Dykes, and today we have an absolutely awesome guest on the show, Mr. Andrew Coppin, and he's here from RanchBot. And if you wanted to call this episode or give it a title, I'd call it Water-Wise, Transforming Cattle Ranching with RanchBot Technology. But Andrew, we're so glad to have you on today. Appreciate you being on the show.
Great to be here, Kyle. Nice to see you.
Absolutely. Well, great weather to show up, and you've got a beautiful office here right here in Fort Worth, Texas. Just exciting to get to talk about this product. As we mentioned earlier, it's extremely easy just to talk about because it's such a useful product. If you would just give a kind of a brief introduction of yourself, kind of what was the brainchild behind this idea, and how it got started, a little bit of your background.
Yeah, well, like so many technology companies and just companies in general, I guess there is an interesting sort of backstory and how life sort of brings things together. I mean, as a teenager, I spent a lot of time on cattle ranches in Australia, chasing bulls on horses and driving around checking water that didn't need checking 95% of the time. I didn't really know that 25 years later I'd be running a water technology company that would be solving that problem. But, that's how life is and how, the cards fell. I met my co-founder, Craig, who's a technologist, sort of 10 years ago, and he had some ideas about remote monitoring and control of water systems on farms. And at that stage, I was an investor looking for, some companies to invest in and some things to do. And I sort of said to him, look, this is interesting, but the bigger issue is about ranching where there's, remote areas, there's no power, there's no telecommunications. If we could make a device that ranchers could take out of the box, install in a couple of minutes, and that would work anywhere on the planet, I think there's a really big problem to solve because ranchers spend a lot of time driving to check water that, 95% of the time doesn't need checking for the 5% of times that it does. And that was sort of the genesis of the, what problem are we going to solve? And so we said about that. We spent a couple of years, to be honest, like it was Craig in the garage making stuff and me talking to a few ranchers and trying to see how we could solve that problem really, really well. There'd been previous attempts to solve the problem, but a lot of them had sort of come out of the oil and gas industry, which meant the technology was large, expensive, and required the words that no rancher ever wants to hear, which is, we will send a technician, someone to get bogged, someone to leave the gate open. So we thought, no, we've got to rethink that. It's got to be affordable. It's got to turn on and work anywhere. And that's where we sort of created this in Australia, what's known as FarmBot product that straight out of the box had to talk to a satellite and had to have its own power. And so we built a device with solar panel batteries that were charged by the sun and that could talk direct to satellite. We actually built 100 of those devices and put them out in the pasture. And
wow.
Craig thought I was a bit of a lunatic because I said, look, we're not going to build the 101st one until we've had those 100 out there operating for a year because we have to make them nature proof and ranch proof, and in Australia, like in vast tracts of America, we have extreme heat, we have dust storms, we have fire, we have fog, we have,
a little bit of everything,
and, that nature can throw at it.
Yeah.
And so we ironed out all the creases. We just made these 100 devices that would work. And because we thought if we're going to scale this thing, we can't send it to people and have them call later and say, look, it's not working, because they're going to go down the end of a long dirt road in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So look, fast forward to today. We're now on over 5,000 ranches. There's about 8,500 ranches using our platform on any given sort of week or month. And, we've taken a remote water monitoring solution to the world. And, I'm sitting here in our Fort Worth office, and now in the US as RanchBot, a product that's made here in Texas. So
sure. Well, and I understand too. I mean, we've got big ranches here in the United States, but what a great place to test and start your product. I mean, y'all know heat, y'all know drought, y'all know the vast size of the paddocks and ranches that you have there in Australia. I can only imagine. I mean, it had to work. And so that's pretty neat. And being able to test that in that environment and then, then bring it here, you felt pretty confident about how it would survive and how it would work for these ranchers over here in the United States, I would assume.
Yeah, I sort of like to think we test drove it in Australia, one of the harshest climates on the planet, and then moved it here. Yeah, look, in Australia, we're on some of the biggest ranches in the world. I mean, Anna Creek, I think it's over 10,000 square miles.
Wow.
So you can imagine for those big landscapes, the amount of time and money we can save them from driving around, or it might even be flying around in a helicopter,
for sure,
is huge. But look, the issue of monitoring water for livestock is no less for someone with 10 cows in West Texas on a 120-degree day. We still need to know that there is water there.
Right.
And so invariably we have to go and check. So, yeah, I do think we sort of nature-proof the product there. We now proudly build it here in Texas. And, like I've now been living here for over a year and coming here for about 3 years. And I've just realized that the water problems here in the United States are just the same, if not even more extreme in some instances than in Australia, because, the imperative to manage water well across all of agriculture, not just ranching, is so huge because, we've got 330 million people to feed.
Right.
And, we're dealing with weather whiplash. What have we had this week? We've had, tornadoes to our east, and, blizzards to our north, and, floods down south, and extreme droughts to the west.
Yeah.
So we've covered every single possible outcome in the last week here in the US. So, I guess back in the old days, the rancher would walk around pulling out their pocketbook saying, I think this feels a little bit like, 1984. What did I do in 1984? And then we sort of seek to replicate the activities we undertook then on how we managed our livestock across different pastures. Whereas nowadays we have, 1984, 2004 and 2024 all in 6 months. I think, like most businesses on the planet, we need to use data to our advantage. And so ultimately, apart from the practicalities of stopping to drive to check water that doesn't need checking and get back a couple of extra days in your week and go to fix problems where there are problems, we're also seeing this emerging trend and capability to look at how am I going versus this time last year and the year before, and what decisions could I make about the water availability and the pasture availability on my ranch to run a better, more efficient and more productive operation. So I don't think it'll ever remove rancher intuition.
Sure.
But why wouldn't you use additional tools and insights if they're available?
I mean, we've developed calving ease bulls and things like that to make sure that we can sleep at night during the calving season. Why not have something that helps you sleep at night, letting you know that, hey, something goes wrong, I can get the alert, or I can make sure I manage that properly. Diving into rewinding back whenever you kind of were coming up with that product, a little bit of background on yourself in terms of your history in the cattle business or in the technology side of things. Ranchers face so many different challenges, and talking about those challenges that you experienced to develop that, what were some of those challenges in terms of that I guess, we talked about the distance of driving to the different paddocks and ranches and water sources around there, but what types of issues does RanchBot monitor to let those ranchers know that there's an issue there?
Yeah, so I mean, our thinking at the genesis of this was a couple of key things. One was the only time to know you've got a problem with water for when you're carrying livestock is right now.
Hmm.
So we had to have this immediacy of knowledge. There was no point being told 4 hours later that
Yeah.
there was a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because ranchers, we all know when the problem's only going to happen when we're as far away as we can be, right?
Right.
Or it's where I was yesterday, or it's on the first day of my holiday that I've had in 3 years.
Right.
The first holiday vacation I've had in 3 years, or it's on Friday night on your wife's birthday. So water problems happen at inconvenient times, so that you need to know when you've got a problem, when you've got it. So there was that immediacy issue, and then there was we need to know when the water is too high, because we can't afford to let water run on the ground. We need to know when water is too low, and also critically, we need to know when it's falling faster than it should. And so embedded in our technology was these algorithms that could monitor the water all the time in real time, but only tell you there's a problem when there's a problem, because
Right.
you don't want text messages and emails, which the device sends to you, coming all day long saying, Kyle, everything's okay, everything's okay, everything's okay. I mean, like it's the boy that cried wolf. It's
Right.
just going to annoy you. Eventually, you won't look at anything.
Sure.
What you really want to know is, Kyle, the water's too high, or the water's too low, or the water's falling too fast. So in our platform, you can determine if 8 inches an hour is normal use with your herd in the pasture. Then anything greater than 8 inches an hour, I want to know about it,
Absolutely.
because that's got to be something else.
That's serious.
So so we've allowed ranchers to customize all that information, so they can, because obviously a few inches an hour in a big body of water could be a lot, and a few inches an hour in a small body of water might be perfectly normal. So it's this customization, it's the immediacy of data, and it's watching without telling. Unless you need to know. I think they're probably the biggest hurdles. And obviously there were some practical ones that, of the, I don't know, 27 plus thousand devices we've got out in the field, there is no power. There is no communications. Often there's no cell. So it's this satellite direct communications and managing power efficiently,
Mhm.
whilst providing a service that's real time.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, when it comes to the different environments, I know we've talked a lot about heat and things of that nature and drought type situations. How does your product perform in the colder climates as well?
Yeah, so that's been an interesting innovation, because Australia does heat pretty damn well, but we don't really do minus 30 degrees. So yeah, over the last couple of years, we've run trials in the northern states, up in Oregon, Montana, and some pretty harsh areas where we put our devices to the test. Typically, we sort of, when we're doing R&D, research and development of new products, we will build 5 or 6 of them and put them out in the field for a season.
Hmm.
And then we might build 50 of them and put them out in the field for a season. And then on your sort of year 3, you end up with a new product. So we actually had to change the batteries that we use in RanchBot from Australia, so that they can survive in sub-zero temperatures.
Okay.
And we also had to change how they charge, because the one thing about sort of lithium batteries, they don't like being charged when they're cold. And we all know here in the States you can get cold but sunny.
Hmm.
So you don't really want to be trying to charge a battery when it's cold and sunny. You need to really trickle charge it.
Okay.
So we had to amend a few things to deal with cold. And at the moment, this winter that's just passed, we're actually trialing monitoring water heaters, and being able to tell ranchers when there's an icing event occurring,
Okay.
and what the water temperature is, because one thing I've heard from so many ranchers here is the one job you do not want to have to do is going to break
Break
ice.
an ice. Yeah.
So we sort of figure if we can help ranchers solve that problem, that's a really good one to solve. So we're working on that now because, again, we're a customer-led innovation firm. We don't build stuff because we think it'd be cool.
Right.
We build stuff because ranchers ask for it, and we live and die for them to make their lives better.
Yeah. You mentioned the battery situation. That's kind of like going back to the ranch at our place. I've got an old tractor that sits there, and you got to trickle charge it, or you can just go out there and jump it off. But you can't just go out there and jump off your RanchBot and, get the battery working like it needs. It needs to be working all the time. And so that's important that y'all are constantly doing things that are extremely necessary to make that work on its own.
Mm.
Talk a little bit more about some of the types of watering. I don't know the best way to put it, but like, troughs versus ponds versus, single type wells, what sort of bodies of water or troughs does it monitor?
Yeah, so over the last few years, I mean, we originally started monitoring what I would call water storages, 10, 20,000, in some instances, 100,000 plus gallon water storages that are feeding water infrastructure that then goes to a trough or a drinker. Over the last few years, we've continued to build out a suite of different products that talk to RanchBot and talk to our platform. So we now have trough monitors for monitoring livestock drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
We have well monitors for monitoring the water coming out of the well. And we have storage monitors for monitoring the water in storage that's feeding those ecosystems. And again, we've continued to build out all of the infrastructure around that. I guess, simplistically these days, I feel like if it's within sort of 5 miles of a well, and it can be turned on, turned off, or monitored, and ranchers are going to want data around it, we should try and get it to talk to RanchBot. So now we're monitoring water pressure, we're monitoring water flow in pipes. We're even turning pumps on and off remotely without even having to go there. Diesel pumps and electric pumps and solar pumps. Because, when we solve this problem around, you got to be careful, what problems you solve. Sometimes you solve them, you create other problems. And so when we solve this, I don't have to drive to check water anymore. People were calling saying, Coppo, this is great, but I've still got to go and check my rain gauge.
Yeah.
And so we invented an electronic rain gauge, so they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And then the next thing was, well, now I have to go and turn my pump on and off anyway. So we invented remote pump control, so they didn't have to do that. And so I think that's a really exciting and interesting thing in what we're doing here. We're creating ranch-friendly technology to deal with the problems of efficiency and productivity on a ranch. I mean, I've been on hundreds of ranches in the last couple of years. I think I drove 55,000 miles last year alone. Wow. And I've never met a rancher that, has got time on their hands. I've never met a rancher with a bottom on the to-do list. I've never met a rancher that has ample good labor. And, the F-250 doesn't run cheap.
Yeah.
So, we've got all these pressures on us as ranchers of costs and human resources. And the one thing we just don't have is time. And so, by creating these new technologies, we're giving ranchers back time and we're giving them peace of mind. If someone had said to me a few years back, Coppo, you're going to be selling time and peace of mind, I probably would have thought, they didn't know what they were talking about. But now I've just had so many ranchers tell me that that's what we've given them, that, I'm really, really proud of the work we've done. And, our impact on the sector that, rarely gets a lot of leg ups in their favor, so it's a real honor for us to do that. And, there's over 80 people in our firm, and, we're servicing, as I said, 8,500 plus ranches. So it's been great.
That's amazing. And it's a very rewarding experience too, I can imagine. I know you mentioned the rain gauge. That's probably one of my favorite pieces of the technology, just being able to look at your phone and say, how many inches of rain did we get? And, a lot of ranchers are there on site all the time. But a lot of ranchers as well are remote, live 2 hours away from a place or lease places, things of that nature that you've got to be able to monitor constantly. So, that's pretty neat. And did you mention? Did I hear that you could do ponds as well, or get a gauge on pond levels
Yeah,
in
we're
some
doing. I
circumstances?
mean, look, I think nowadays we sort of monitor everything from a bathtub size, drinker to a lake, huge dirt tanks and reservoirs, where the custodians of that water are more looking for year on year trends, and or they've got reporting requirements under different regulations to know how much water is coming in and out, and so we do think that gathering data around your water is critical. Knowing your usage rates and being able to prove that you're a good custodian of the water and indeed of the natural capital that you've got on your ranch is going to be a really critical thing going forward. So whether we look at it from there's the benefits to the rancher on the day to day. So with the rain gauge, for example, I mean, we just started monitoring rainfall. Today, we can allow you to compare rainfall year on year, month on month over different time periods. We can allow you to compare rain across different pastures. So you can work out where we should go and graze next.
Mm-hmm.
And, ranchers can download and monitor all of that data and be able to, make better informed decisions about rainfall in different pastures in different years and different time frames. So even just that development of a rain gauge, you sort of think it's simple, but being able to add richness of information around it is sort
Efficiency,
of is great. So yeah, we've got practicalities for ranchers, and we've got regulation coming at us left, right, and centre. In parts of California, we're monitoring lots of wells because well flow rates are going to become almost, mandatory in some counties. We're monitoring wells down the well. We're monitoring aquifers.
Wow.
We drilled a whole lot of wells. In the 80s and 90s, no one ever went back and checked them, and now we can drop a probe down the well and actually monitor those aquifers and see what's impacting them and how they're performing at different times of year based on different outcomes. So, yeah, I mean, the space in water is still evolving and really critical, but I think this sort of technology has really broad applications, not just within helping ranchers run a more efficient and productive operation, but across a whole spectrum of ag and wildlife management and and management of natural capital.
It's just funny. I mean, stuff my grandpa growing up never would have thought about back in his day, either out of abundance because it wasn't something you had to worry about, at certain stages in history, and then stuff that it was things that you worried about, but you just never thought it was even possible. That's amazing what you're doing. What's some of the feedback you're getting from some of your customers? I know that has helped kind of alter how you've improved certain pieces of technology, but what are some of the positives that you're hearing from them when it comes to the different products that you supply?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we one of the big challenges for us is, that we're changing behaviour. I get it because I had to do it at one point. We drive and check things, and we check a whole lot of other things while we're checking water. But if you think about it, most ranchers say, "I'm going to go out and check water." Now, while they're doing that, they put out salt, they put out leak blocks, they and minerals. They check the fences and they check the cows. But the overarching critical event is I'm driving to check water. When you don't have to drive to check water, you can free up your other time to choose when you're going to do those other jobs, and you can work on some of the other more critical things in the ranch, like getting a better price for the cattle, or more on your genetics, or negotiating with your feed supplier or your auctioneer to get a better price. So the thing we hear most common is we've just saved them an incredible amount of time. I mean, most of us sort of put this driving to check water just in the category of job of ranching.
Right.
I've even had people say, Andrew, are you trying to steal my job? But that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm trying to give ranchers more time to do the things they really need to do. Now, that could be more of the jobs on the ranch. It could be more time for roping and hunting, or more time for the family and church. It can be all of those things. But sort of time, money, obviously, we mentioned before, the F-250 or the Dodge Ram don't run cheap. So gas prices and labor prices are just, on the up and up. And we need to run more efficient ranching. So it's time, it's money. And the other one that's sort of, an intangible, and even though I had some experience with this as a teenager, I didn't own the problem of water deprivation for my cattle. And so when I hear ranchers say to me that we are giving them peace of mind, I really now have a deeper understanding. Ranchers spend so much time worrying about things they cannot see or are not in their direct control. Because if I've got 500 cows in the back pasture and it's 120 degrees today, I need to know they've got water.
Right.
And if I don't have RanchBot, I'm spending a lot of time worrying about it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I sort of feel like ranchers sort of climb the wall of worry until it gets to the breaking point, and then they go and check again and relieve their concern, and then they start climbing the wall of worry again. The crazy thing is we drive to check things that 95% of the time don't need checking for the 5% of times that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 minute after we've checked it, we still don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's that peace of mind, is the feedback that we get, that I think is actually probably the most valuable thing
100%.
we deliver, giving ranchers some stress relief amidst a world of, challenges that are thrown at ranchers, weather whiplash, prices, floods, droughts, managing a ranch, which of course we all do because we love it and because we want to be in that industry and that career. But I tell you what, given a few extra days and some peace of mind is not going to go astray.
100%. Well, and the confidence, in today's age where we've got a lot of rotation, rotational grazing, and I think back to the place that I'm got cows on, and there's so many, so much pasture that's great grass, very utilizable land, in terms of grazing that you want to be able to get out there and utilize. Could be some of the best land there for that. But if you don't have a water source, then, you can't put something out there. You're better off cutting it for hay or something of that nature. But being able to put, a smaller water source or even having to truck water to it, you can still have that confidence and peace of mind of monitoring whatever source you're putting out there, whether it's hauling to that source and keeping track of how fast it's gone down or when it's gone down to go put more. You can utilize more opportunity on your land as well.
Yeah, we're doing some really interesting work in that area, Kyle, now with, where we realize that, ranchers don't want 7 apps to run the show, right? I mean, so we're collaborating with other technology providers that are looking at soil, that are looking at pasture, that are looking at other things, and we're overlaying those things onto our app so that they can see, how much pasture is in, how much energy is in this field. And obviously, when we think about that, you start going deeper and you say, well, if soil moisture and soil temperature informs pasture growth, and I can assess how much energy is in the field, how much standing dry matter is in the field, I can then sort of look at, I've got a water availability, I've got a pasture availability. What is my optimum grazing period in this pasture based on all known inputs? And so I feel like we're heading towards that sort of outcome where we can actually give ranchers a pretty good estimate around what they should do, and then of course they will add their rancher intuition to it and their knowledge of their property, and be able to make even better informed decisions. So
Wow.
this merging of data and of different technologies is a big project for us over the next couple of years, and we're really excited about where that can go.
Absolutely. Well, that's exciting to see, and I'll be excited to see what y'all roll out next. Yeah, I guess, are there any other details or key points that you want ranchers to know about when it comes to, I know one thing, I guess, in saying that comes to mind, installation. Talk real quick, touch on that. I know that could be maybe something that might keep somebody from, you mentioned the time aspect. Oh, I don't have time to put it in. I mean, it takes what, 5 minutes to put the unit in? Talk a little bit about that and how y'all can assist ranchers in that department.
Yeah, well, look, from the very get-go, one of our key things in the DNA of the firm was, we have to be able to get ranchers to open the box. Everything they need to install it's got to be in the box. So every screw, everything that every washer, everything they're gonna need has to be there. They don't have to drive back into town to go and buy some part. And we thought, well, they're going to open the box. They're not going to read the instructions, so we better just have a picture or two, and they've got to be able to work it out. It's got to be intuitive. So yeah, I'm pleased to say that like 98% of our products are really that simple. And I guess what I do here is people, they buy it and we tell them it's going to be simple, and they leave it in the barn for a few weeks, probably thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to tackle that thing.
I was guilty of that.
Yeah, and then they go and do it and go, oh, and they ring me, oh, hey, Coppo, you weren't joking. That thing's really bloody simple. I'm like, well, we did tell you that. So simplicity of installation and being able to get a day worker, anyone, to be able to go and install it intuitively with a drill and, a couple of screws easily has been our mantra. I guess the only places where we've sort of deviated a little from that is, with remote pump control, it requires you to connect wires into your pump controller and other things. So you do need to sort of have a very good knowledge of electricity or have an electrician, on the ranch come and install those things so that you can turn your pumps on and off remotely. But that's about as complex as it's got for us. And, we making sort of hard things real easy is hard.
Sure.
So, we're now on the 7th generation of our product.
Wow.
And, we're already planning Mark 8, better, stronger, faster, always works with the things we built before. But it's just, every year you learn new things. You learn that there could be better, more efficient ways or cheaper ways to deliver the outcome because, our products, we don't want price to get in the way of innovation. So like a RanchBot costs, $1,490. It's like less than a cow these days.
Yeah.
And it runs at $1 a day. So, how far do you get in the F-250 for $1?
Right.
You can barely get out of the ranch headquarters. So at $1 a day, when you actually think about the operating cost of labor, of fuel, of wear and tear on the motor vehicles, which is hard when you're going up and down those roads. And, again, we just don't often really quantify this true cost of driving to check water. But look, resounding feedback from our customers is that this thing pays for itself inside 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's within days if you get a big water leak and, you weren't going to be there.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's never more than a year. So we're really happy about that, and we're trying to, help provide a really affordable solution that's reliable and that ranchers can trust. They've got to have faith in the system that's telling them, when there's a problem or when there is not.
I also know certain drought relief programs throughout the state, at least in Texas, provide certain, per head allotments, in terms of how much drought management or how much drought impact they had that year. Those funds can even be utilized to cover more than the cost. More than the cost of the system. Talk a little bit about, I know you said the infrastructure of the company and how many people y'all have on staff now, but that support, if somebody has an issue, who do they call? How do they reach somebody at RanchBot?
Yeah, so whilst we've talked primarily about hardware today, where people end up after they've installed the devices is on the My RanchBot platform, which is super intuitive. It's a traffic light system. You log in, you see, red is bad, green is good, orange is something not quite right. And as I've said, the platform sends you text messages or emails to you or whoever you want on the ranch. There's no limit of how many people you can send alerts to. So they end up on my RanchBot platform where they can, again, look at their water levels, see trends, look at rainfall, look at water pressure, look at water flow, turn pumps on or off. I mean, you can even have cameras hooked into your RanchBot so you can actually take photos of your infrastructure or your pens, whatever you want. But behind the scenes, of course, there's all, we're selling a service. We're selling an ongoing thing. I mean, I say to my team, and I really believe this, that we're selling technology that's our ranchers' kids are going to use. It's multi-generational. It's changing how ranches operate for the better. So we provide an ongoing service, and I've really, been proud to hire young, second, third, fourth generation ranchers to come and work with us in our team to provide that customer support. Because when I'm a rancher and I'm calling someone because I need help, I need help right now, not tomorrow or the next day. B, I never want to hear the, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, because I don't have that time.
Yep.
And when I get through, I want someone that knows what I'm talking about. I want them to understand, I'm at a trough, I'm at a pump, I'm at a drinker, I've got this problem. So we, in our customer support team, we just hire rancher folk, and we aim to provide that support from sort of 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Across the country. So so it's been great to hire rancher folk. I mean, part of the decision for me to come and set up here in Fort Worth was, of course, it's Cowtown.
Absolutely.
But, we're surrounded here by some of the best universities and educators on the planet for ranching and animal health. So we're sort of surrounded here by smart young people, often from ranching backgrounds, who want to continue a career in ranching. And this whole ranch technology space is going to be creating hundreds of jobs that didn't exist previously,
right?
And that are showing ranchers more efficient ways. I mean, the evolution of ranch tech, not just ours, but in a whole lot of areas, with tagging, with pastures, with soil, with carbon sequestration, with weighing, with virtual fencing. There's so many things that are coming into this space now as we seek to operate more efficiently and increase productivity. Let's not forget, we've got to sort of produce twice as much food on the planet by 2050 with our available resources. We don't have more land, we don't have more water. We've got to do this better. So I think, that's another big driver for us. And, we're now employing, I think, 16 people in the US here and, close to 80 in Australia. I mean, I think here in the coming couple of years, we'll employ another, 20 or 30 people who'll be hopefully young American rancher folk who are studied in engineering or in animal health or in ranch management to help them be the rancher of the future.
That's awesome. Well, and that points on to, kind of where do you see the role of technology evolving and what the future holds for RanchBot. I appreciate you giving us that insight there. Man, just a really neat piece of technology, and it's all right there on the platform at your fingertips. You can even save it instead of, like you said, having to download yet another app in today's age. You can just save it to your home screen on your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody at support can walk you through that. It makes it so easy just to log right in, check things, give you that peace of mind. And where can people find more information? What's the website, and how do they get a hold of everything's right there on the website, but is it if you would...
so it's ranch-bot.com. All the information's there. The phone number is on the front page. Call our team and you'll be speaking to a rancher folk that understands your business and what solutions are best. I like to think we've sort of developed a toolkit for things for helping run the water and the infrastructure on the ranch And we all know you can bang a nail in with a wrench, but you're better to use a hammer. So our team is trying to identify the best tools for the job that you want to solve, whether that's a trough monitor, whether it's a RanchBot light, whether it's a RanchBot, rain gauges, or other tools that we've got. It's finding the right tools for the job that you want to solve to remove the biggest pain points that you want to solve. And we always recommend ranchers start with those one or two, problem children, those water points that always break, that always cause you pain. Solve them first and get used to, how this technology is going to work for you, and then explore the other opportunities that are available. So
lots of things to expand on. I love that. Yeah. Start at the base and grow from there.
Yeah.
Well, just for everybody out there listening, be sure and check out RanchBot. Go to their website, call in. I mean, it's just a super friendly environment here at the office in Fort Worth. What a great central hub. I mean, you can be anywhere you want to be in Texas from here, or even in the States. Just encourage y'all to reach out to RanchBot, talk to somebody on the phone, ask all the questions. Y'all are going to be at what events are y'all going to be at coming up?
Texas Cattle Raisers, obviously. We love that event. This will be our sort of third or fourth year at TSCRA. There's another Animal Innovation Summit that's been brought to Texas for the first time this year, that's happening in April. And
y'all just got back from NCBA.
We've just been at NCBA. Yeah, look, our team are out and about. We have account managers all around the country, and so we go to as many cattlemen's events as we can. And you'll see and find out where we are on our website. And we'd love to have a chat with you.
That's a true testament in the business. You can see how dedicated and how serious the company is by how involved they are in the industry. You're not just hands off. Y'all are right in it, going to each and every one of these events, and we see y'all there, and it's great to do that. Follow them on all their socials as well. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And this has been an enlightening experience to dive a lot deeper into the product, and a serious product that can really help farmers and ranchers out there in the industry.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Look, as I said, I think, just to close, I mean, there is so much great technology out there. Ranchers should really start pay attention. It's not early. This isn't sort of experimental anymore. This is actually becoming mainstream. New technologies in ranching that are going to help you run a lot better business and save you time and money, and, as I said, give you peace of mind. So whether it's water monitoring or virtual fencing or walkover weighing or any of the other technologies that are out there, I think the key themes for 25 and 26, you have to, just try some technology on your ranch, and you won't regret it if you make the right decisions, and you'll get time and money back in your pocket.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you again, Andrew. Appreciate you being on, and have a wonderful day. And want to also say thank you so much for listening right here on Top Cattle Sales. We do appreciate you. You can find this episode wherever you get your podcasts, or at topcattlesales.com.